agility, and you just keep testing and trying different things out. What worked 6 months ago is just not going to work anymore right now. I think every organization should turn their sales org into a sales lab. So you have to create this agile framework, like Kaizen, man, every day, continuous improvement.
Welcome back to the Industrial Growth Institute podcast, where I'm lucky I get to speak with fascinating guests to help gradually weave together the full range of concepts and approaches that are necessary to succeed in today's complex sales or revenue growth markets. One of my consistent themes is that industrial salespeople can learn a lot from tech, where investor impatience and demands force creative approaches and experiments and rigor and a very different sort of a sales culture than we often find in the industrial space. And today I'm joined by somebody who's probably fair to say absolutely legendary in tech sales. John Barrows is the CEO of JB Sales, a sales training company that's focused, the way he calls it, focused on elevating people and the profession of sales. He's got over 400,000 followers on LinkedIn. He's a LinkedIn top voice, and his company, JB Sales, is actually one of the top 3 rated training companies on G2. He's been in sales his entire life. He's held every position from essentially a BDR, before we called it a BDR, making 400 cold calls a week, to being the VP of sales at one of the fastest growing companies in Massachusetts. They eventually were sold to Staples. And that's actually back where my story begins with John, probably in about 2000, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
But today, as a CEO of his own company, he still walks the talk. He sells actively every single day. And I think that's a critical element of his credibility. He's also a podcaster himself. He's the host of the Make It Happen Mondays, the B2B sales talk show with John Barrows. And last, but he says, he emphasizes not least, he's also the proud father of a proud author and father of his co-author of an Amazon best-selling children's book called I Want to Be in Sales When I Grow Up. He wrote that with his daughter to help introduce sales to the younger generation. And they have both committed that 100% of the profits go to charity. So as we kick off, please don't forget to do your part. Hit the bell, like, share, comment, subscribe to this podcast, share this episode with friends and colleagues. And with that, please join me in welcoming Mr., as he calls himself, Make It Happen, John Barrows.
Hey, what's up, Ed? It's good to see you, man. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. I'm glad that you've carved out a little bit of time to join me for this conversation today.
Of course, it's been a while. It's been, like you said, I think it's been almost 25 years, if give or take. So
does 2000 sound right?
Give or take. Well, I joined, we started Thrive in June of 2000, and I joined, I think, 2001-ish.
Okay.
I was the 5th person on board. So the 3 founders started, and then I came on pretty close. So probably 2001, 2002, but yeah, pretty close.
Got it. And I think at that time, you were really brand new in sales. You were coming off a year at Xerox, but you didn't have a career in sales at that point. You were fairly new.
Yeah, my first job, just like everybody, I didn't, have a degree in sales. I got marketing as my background, and then I got into DeWalt Power Tools, and that's where that was a little bit more event marketing. It was, I was driving around giving away free tools to construction workers, right? Running, shows and stuff like that. And then I graduated to Home Depot, where it was DeWalt, but selling to Home Depot now. And that's where it kind of evolved a little bit, where, Home Depot obviously had to buy DeWalt tools, but I had to take that $10,000, $15,000 order and turn it into a $50,000 order, right? So that's where I learned, cross-sell, upsell, relationships with the owner of each store, right? How to kind of manage and get on the good side of the employees, so I could kind of do some of the stuff that I wanted to do. But then I got Xerox, and that's really where I got my true sales education. I sold copiers to the government, which is about as bad as it gets from a commodity standpoint. And then I joined Thrive Networks, and that's where I kind of took off from just entrepreneur and startup world, which I thrived in, because I didn't realize it was part of my DNA, but it was definitely, when I got there, I realized it was.
And did you get the year-long Xerox sales university that we always used to hear about, or had they changed it when you joined?
So it was interesting, right? So it was an 8-week sales training program that they were famous for, right? And you went up to Rochester, New York. You spent 8 weeks in class and, doing role plays and all that other stuff. And then you theoretically should have gotten into territory, but you were almost like an apprentice where
Okay.
you got partnered up with somebody for a few months, whatever it was. And then you got your territory, right? That's how it used to go. I was the first year that they brought the training local. So instead of everybody going to Rochester, they had a regional versions of it, right? So the Boston office is the one I went through, and it was still 8 weeks. And theoretically, you still should have had an apprentice and all that stuff. But for some reason, I interviewed well. I remember, that's actually a funny story in itself. But they gave me a territory that was just absolutely ravaged. They had like 5 or 6 reps in 3 years.
Wow.
And so they put me in territory effectively day one. So I had to do the training while going out in the field and trying to sell, which in hindsight was weird because I kind of disregarded the training. I was like, yeah, whatever. Like, I got to get out there and sell. So yeah, sure. Now I ended up being top of the class, whatever they call it, magna cum laude. If they have these little weird awards for that. But
Right.
what I think subconsciously happened was I was learning and applying. I wasn't just learning through onboarding for 6 weeks, 8 weeks, whatever it is, and then being released into the wild to try to remember all that stuff and apply it,
Right.
which I think was just aligned directly with the way I work in general.
And has
And
that
that's
shaped the way that you train as well?
100%, right? Because I can't stand training that's theoretical. I
Right.
personally can't even stand role playing when it comes to training, because 9 times out of 10, it's the trainer showing off because they've done it a million times, and it's in just such a fake scenario that would never actually happen. So to me, when I got to Basho, fast forward, they had their training was different. It wasn't role play based. It was like you train something in the morning, like for the modules that we delivered, we would train in the morning and then we would do live application in the afternoon. So it wasn't like, okay, everybody stand up and now pick your partner. It's like, pick an account that you want to get into, do some research, write this email, send it, right? Oh, you got a meeting coming up next week? Let's prepare for that meeting. Let's go through this and da-da. So it just resonated with me. And I'm a big believer in application. Like, try it, apply it, learn it, apply it, learn it, and be agile enough to adjust and move on and fail fast. And so that really resonated with me early in my career.
That makes a lot of sense, although what you're describing also makes me acutely uncomfortable because I'm a huge believer in role play. I think there's
Yep.
a step in between. I think you teach it, and then we have to kind of, if we have a sports analogy, we have to walk through it. We put the X's and O's on the whiteboard, we walk through it, we jog through it, and then we run through it. And it
Right.
feels like the run through is, okay, call somebody up and actually try it.
Yeah.
But many people just have to hear it coming out of their own mouth first in order to get comfortable with it.
I agree. And I think, again, it's how you apply it and who applies it, quite frankly, right? Because my disdain for it always came from the sales rep who I could tell never actually did the job, or
Right.
if they did it, they weren't very good at it.
Right.
But we've all heard, if you can't teach it, train it, right? Or if you can't do it, train it. So I would always go through these role plays and be like, dude, like, yeah, okay, but that's so, like, it just sounds so fake and contrived. So even for me, like, and again, these were the people so that's why I have a particular disdain for it for myself. But where I think role playing has an absolute impact, and I love it, is actually right before you're about to do the thing.
Okay.
So in your sports analogy, right? Like, I don't just play ball. Like, if I'm playing in a game, I don't just show up and I'm like, all right, cool, put me on the court, let's go, and start shooting, and start playing the game.
Right.
I take a few layups, I stretch out a little bit, those type of things. But I do it right before the game so I can visualize, okay, like,
Sure.
I'm going to shoot some free throws so I can visualize it going in. Great. That's when I think it's huge, right? So, like, right before I'm about to do a call blitz, I want a role play, because I want to get the first few out there and whatever, but then I quickly
Right.
want to transition to live application to see if I can. Same thing with a meeting. I'd love to role play a scenario with a client that I'm about to meet with. with my boss, right? Hey, boss, here's the scenario. I'm walking in. These are the three people. Here's my agenda. Here's the way I think I want. Here's my goals for this. Could you act as that person? And by the way, I'm going to ask you this. I want you to object, right? I want to kind of figure out how that goes, those type of things. Like, all right, let's run that. Cool. Now let me go do it, right? So that to me is where I think role play can have a pretty significant difference.
Makes sense.
But it's just the role play to role play that's the part that bothers me.
And how about this fundamental mindset that when you start a job, you ought to get sales training? Obviously, it used to be prevalent, whether you talk about IBM or Xerox or anybody. It seems now to be, at least in the space where I live, quite unusual. What's your sense? Should every company have sales training every year?
Yeah. I mean, that's very selfish on my part to say the answer to that question, but yes. But so yes, and I think it depends on the type of sales training. I think that, look, I think we're moving into a world right now, and I don't care what you sell. AI is coming for all of us.
Okay.
All of us. I don't care what you sell, who you sell to. Tech, we're at the leading edge of it, and I'm seeing it wipe out sales professionals. And actually, I think it's going to lean back in your direction from a kind of a manufacturing standpoint, because I used to crap on, old school sales reps who were, golf and steak dinners. And I'm like, you fucking dinosaurs. You know what I mean? Like that's just so 1980, 90 sailing. And, and I preach like value was the new relationship developer. Like if you're like, just because you bring me out to a steak dinner and golf that's not value. Bringing insights to me is value. Right. And you can combine the two, obviously, but I always used to kind of crap on. Now I've reversed my opinion. I actually think steak dinners and golf are effectively what's going to be left, because the intelligence, AI is already better than us at everything. Like from an IQ standpoint, AI, I don't care who you are, I don't care what you sell, it's smarter than you are, it's better than you are. And as soon as our clients start to figure that out, and so instead of sitting with some dipshit sales rep that's going to drone through BANT questions and some stupid demo that they don't care about, they can just turn to ChatGPT and say, what do I need to know about this product and service, and how does it fit into what I do, and how does it compare to their top? As soon as the client really clicks on that and says, wait a minute, why do I need you? Then what's left? Well, what's left is the human element. What's left is the EQ side of this, which I fear, especially in SaaS, we have gotten so far away from.
You think?
Oh God, SaaS and COVID. I think the predictable revenue model in SaaS and COVID, I think, ruined sales in so many ways, because it effectively turned it into transactional. No matter, even if you sold high, really expensive, complex sales, we're sitting in a 30-minute Zoom session. See you later. Sorry, this conversation's over. Whereas before, I'd be able to walk into your office, I'd be able to sit there, and it was kind of awkward for you to kick me out because I was literally sitting in front of you, and I could develop rapport. I could read body language, all that, right? And with COVID, now these reps they're being introduced in a virtual world. And so they're not even in the bullpen anymore, right? Where you and I growing up in sales, I don't know about you, I didn't get a lot of great training when I grew up in sales, but I was in the bullpen and I was around sales all the time. So I learned through osmosis, you know what I mean? Like the rep next to me would make a killer cold call and I'd be like, damn, I like the way you said that. You know what I mean? The VP would come over and talk about a deal next to me with another rep. And I'd be like, oh, well, that's kind of interesting. So I would literally just learn just by being around it. And my first 10 years of my career was face-to-face selling, driving all around Massachusetts, meeting with people. So just that alone, going to networking events, you know what I mean? Being awkward, sticking my hand and introducing myself to somebody I'd never talked to before in my life. Like that education somehow needs to come back. Because
and so are you saying you think people need to work from the office again, or what?
Oh yeah, no. Well, here's the deal. I think that your first 2 years of your career, absolutely 1000% be in the office. I'm sorry. I don't care what your opinion is of that. And I don't think how good you are at what you are. You're not going to be, there's no team environment in a remote world. There's no anything. You can't develop relationships in a remote world.
Completely agree.
Okay. So you can't, they'll be surface level. They'll be very superficial, right? Depth is where we need to get back to. Quality is where we need to get back to, right? From our outreach, from our messaging, from everything. And so I think, yes, the first 2 years minimum of your career. And then you earn the right to be. Now, you tell, as an example, you tell me I got to come back in the office as a 50-year-old man, kiss my ass. Like,
On the
no.
other hand, if part of your premise is that the young people need to be in the office to be exposed to the veterans and the experienced people, then how does that model work if you don't make the others come to the office?
Look, I don't. So me personally, like I'm saying for me personally, like I will never go back because I've paid my dues, I've done my thing, and quite frankly, I'm done helping develop teams. I'm
Okay.
done. Like I train that. Okay, so for me in my professional career, that you got a better shot at seeing God than me coming back to the office. Okay, but I think you make it so once a week, right? That everybody, at least at once a week, everybody has to come into the office, but then you also have the management side of the house who is managing that team that's there for the first 2 years. They have seniority, they have experience, you know what I mean, they can bring it to the table. You're going to have executives in the office all the time anyways, right?
Right.
So I think you can have this nice healthy mix, but I also just kind of like the SDR BDR kind of progression, right? It's kind of the same thing as like you earn different things at different stages of your career.
Right.
And you earn the right to be a remote sales rep. You earn the right, but I got to know if I can trust you first.
But you're making the point that it's about the development. A lot of people cast it as you got to pay your dues, and I think that rubs people the wrong way.
Yeah.
On the other hand, if part of paying your dues is going through the development process and the learning process and working the hours and grinding and getting your teeth kicked in, then that's a very different way of looking at it.
Yeah, it is development. Like, and you can't shortcut that.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, I think AI right now is the ultimate equalizer if you use it the right way. Quite frankly,
Right.
That's why I look at senior reps. I'm doing a AI intro to AI free training Friday coming up in a couple of weeks here, because I still, when I do my trainings, I'm like, hey, scale of 1 to 10, scale of 1 to 5, where are you on AI? 1 is you're barely using it, you kind of whatever. 5, you use it every day for everything, right? Still, most people are 2s, right? Maybe 3s, and I'm like,
and where
dude,
are you?
like, I'm probably a 3.
Okay.
I'm right in the middle. Maybe 3.5. Right, I'm probably a little bit better than the average rep. But I just last night I created my own GPT with all my content and everything else. And the 4 things that I do: I prospect, I prep for meetings, I prep for podcasts, and I create content. So I created those 4 different GPTs to help me do my own job, and I literally stuffed it with everything I've ever written, everything I've ever done, and now it's my coach, right?
Do you have one go-to tool, or do you use a variety?
Well, I just created my own, so it's now my go-to tool, right?
But you did that within ChatGPT?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, so I created my own GPT, and because the thing is with my content, right? I just launched my whole new platform and membership. I literally wrote out word for word every single one of the videos so that I could then read it from a transcription standpoint into a camera, right? So I could create this content. So I have everything that I train on in written format. And so I took that, but I don't want to put that on an open GPT, because then anybody could be like, well, just give me John Barrows' training, and there it is, right? So I put it on my own private GPT, and then I gave it every blog I've ever written and all that stuff. And so now it's my own personal coach to do what I want to do. I do have some great go-to GPTs of like 10K analyzers and buyer persona GPTs and research GPTs and all this stuff that's just again, it's like cheating at this point. Like it really is like cheating. Like, but like here's an example, like 10Ks annual reports, man. I went to a state school. I drank my way through 4 years of college. Me reading a 10K is a snooze fest. It's like I might read the first paragraph of the CEO and then the rest EBITDA and blah, blah, blah. I'm just like, oh, boring crap, right? And so if I was preparing for a meeting and it was like a really good meeting, I'd spend, 45 minutes to an hour reading through the 10K, trying to extract insights and everything else. Now there's a GPT. I just upload the 10K to it. It summarizes the entire thing, pulls around the key takeaways, and not only that, aligns my solution and my value proposition with their key initiatives and gives me messaging I can use.
I think it was a year ago, you had a great conversation with Ryan Barretto talking exactly about using it to analyze 10Ks and do pre-call research.
Yeah. It's stupid. Now my pre-call research, by the way, so my training, and I still think this is important. So the challenge that I think we've gotten in ourselves in, well, there's a lot of scary things about AI. There's no question about it. I mean, we can get into the matrix conversation and that type of thing, which I firmly believe we're in anyways. But the challenge with it, with where we are right now, is we went from a search engine to an answer engine.
Right.
Google, and you can argue Google told us whatever it wanted to tell us, whatever, fine. But at least it gave us options. You know what I mean? So when you search for something, you could kind of pick your source of truth and be like, okay, let me read this one, right? Now AI is, nope, that's the answer. And quite frankly, it can't be, it fundamentally can't be 100% accurate because the internet is not 100% accurate.
Right.
And so if you look at AI as like as a co-pilot, as a coach, as a curiosity thing, it is an absolute superpower. You can leapfrog other people. I go back to like business acumen, right? Well, I think that's one thing that's sorely missing in today's world with these kids. Like, we don't teach them about how to have a business conversation. Well, for the right kid who's interested enough, their business acumen could go from 0 to 60 overnight if they felt like it, right? But the problem is most reps don't use it as a curiosity thing. They use it as the answer. So they ask the answer, they take it, they cut it, they paste it, and they send it, or they say it. And that's the danger, because that's where humans aren't necessary. That's when the customer is going to start to say, wait a minute. So here's a perfect example. You have a 22-year-old kid who ChatGPT says, call Ed Marsh. And when you call Ed Marsh, here's 2-3 things about his background, and here's what to say, and here's a value proposition that'll absolutely blow his mind, right? And I call you, and I say that thing, and it fucking works. And you're like, holy shit, that's really interesting. Tell me more. And I sit there like a deer in headlights because I have no context. I have no idea why I even asked that question. Now it all falls apart, right? So unfortunately, Pareto's rule here, 80-20, I personally think, and probably get canceled for shit like this, but I think 80% of the world is sheep. I really do. And they're all just looking for the answer. They're all just looking for somebody else to tell them what to do. And those are the ones who are going to use AI to get the answer. And those are the ones who are irrelevant.
Yeah, period. I mean, I hammer on the point that I believe companies need to set their expectation, not an aspiration, but their expectation that they're going to hire second standard deviation sales talent. We need to be looking for whatever it is, 94.7 or 95.3 or wherever that cutoff is on up. And the fact is, there's a natural bell curve and everything in nature. And I think you'll let the rest of the salespeople work for your competitors. I think you have to go find that top 5%.
I don't even think it's going to be an option anymore, quite frankly. I mean, I start probably about 5 or 6 years ago, and you've probably heard me say this, but like at the end of one of my trainings, it was about 500 reps, and I did a Q&A, and one of the reps asked, well, John, all those logos up there, right? Like, they're all our competitors. So if you're going to train us all on the same stuff, how are we going to differentiate? And my answer was 10, 60, 30. And he goes, what? I go 10, 60, 30. I go 10% of you in this room are going to take what I tell you and execute at the highest level, because that's the type of people you are. 60% of you are going to do something different because it's easy and it makes sense. 30% of you ain't going to do shit different. So the question isn't how many people can I train? The question is, what percentage do you want to be in?
Right.
And that's your choice, not mine. Right. And so now I start my trainings with that, because my belief is the bottom 30%, they're already irrelevant and they know it. They know it, they're scared, and they know it. Right. Those are the reps who are just job hopping, right? Because it gets too hard.
The sales cycle catches up with them. Then they get put on a PIP, and then 3 years later, they're in the next complex sales job in the same industry.
Exactly. Or the SDR that doesn't hit their quota, and their quota goes up a little bit, and right before their year, if they don't get promoted in a year because their tenure has been up, like, they bounce to the next role to find, right? So those reps are gone, and I think they know it, right? The scary part, though, is for me is that bottom 50% of that 60%, the B players, the ones who are just kind of like, just don't want to kind of poke their head up too much. They just want to do their jobs and go through, like, they're irrelevant and they don't know it yet. Right. And that's the part that's going to hurt. The 10% is always the 10%. I don't even really consider myself in the 10%, quite frankly. Like, those are the go-getters. Those are the ones who, like, they're going to pull value out of almost every conversation, and it doesn't matter what you tell them, right? To me, the where I want to focus and where I am focusing is on that top 50% of the 60%. And I call it the ones, the give a shit factor. Mm-hmm. It's the one thing that AI won't and can't fundamentally do.
Right.
It can't give a shit. It can't care. It can pretend to care, but it can't. And so for the reps that care and are willing to put in the work, I will literally give everything to. And those are the ones who are going to be successful. The agile, the ones who are willing to say, I don't know what I don't know, but I'm going to figure it out. And I want to find this out. And I'm not going to wait for my boss to invest in training. I'm not going to wait. I mean, I was at a training. I was doing a training the other day, and I was showing GPTs and all this other stuff. And one of the reps asked the question, and this was like 200 people. I couldn't believe the rep had the balls to ask this question. He goes, hey, John, you're showing all this stuff, and that's the $20 version of GPT. But our company hasn't invested in that for us. So what do you want us to do? Wow. And I was dumbfounded on stage, and I called the kid an idiot. I'm like, I didn't say you're an idiot. I'm like, are you serious with that question? And he was like, yeah. Wow. I'm like, dude, it's $20 fucking a month. Right. I'm like, that is such a limiting mindset that you just told to 200 people and your executive team here that you're just waiting for somebody else to tell you what to do.
Yeah, if you were the only one in the room that had that visceral reaction, then that speaks to the management and leadership too.
I don't think I was, right? Because I just stopped, and after I said, I go, that's not a growth mentality, that's a defeatist mentality. And I go, and that's actually quite concerning that you would even ask the question. And I just looked, and I looked over to the leadership team. I go, and I just went like that, and I kept talking, because that kid's not going to be in that job for very much longer. Or quite frankly, if I was a leader and I heard that, no offense, I would fire that kid as soon as that conversation was over. I'd be like, sorry, thanks for coming. You're not the type of person I want on my team here.
All right, so you're already challenging a lot of conventional wisdom, and I see you call out a lot of BS on LinkedIn.
Yep.
What is the most common sales BS that you see today?
Grant Cardone. Okay. The most common BS is the fact that people think that sales is still about convincing anybody of anything. If you think sales is about convincing somebody about something, you're just a jackass sales rep. You're just a douchebag trying to get paid. Sales is about helping people solve problems or achieve goals, period.
How about discover and understand their problems?
Yeah, we're problem solvers.
Right.
That's it. And if you are not a problem solver, get out of the profession. If you don't genuinely care about helping people solve problems, get out of the profession.
Right.
Here's another one. I make my skin crawl when I hear people say, "Oh, I could sell that's a guy who can sell ice to Eskimos." If you tell me that, I'm telling you that's an asshole. Like, a guy who can sell ice to Eskimos is an asshole.
All right. So when you say that you help people sell without losing their soul, that sounds like an indictment of sales in general, but I don't think that's how you mean it.
No, it's an indictment of the perception of sales. It's an indictment of how some sales, quote unquote, gurus approach the profession. Absolutely. I mean, look, we have a bad reputation for a reason. It's not like I'm sitting here saying, oh, sales is, all sales reps are great and we just have a few bad apples. No, we have a lot of bad apples. And quite frankly, and I pick on Grant Cardone because he's the easiest one to pick on. But guess what? Grant Cardone is literally 10x my value. Actually, he's probably 100x my value. You can get to financial success way faster by being a douchey sales rep. What you want stacks of cash, you want Learjets, you want Rolexes and Benzes and all that other stuff. You can get there, unfortunately, way faster by convincing people of stuff, by being super slick at whatever it might be.
Right.
Doing it, quote unquote, the right way, or the way I feel is the right way, which is integrity and caring and, not trying to convince people, but doing it the right way. It's a lot longer road to success.
Right.
And it's a lot more painful, quite frankly. And I wish it wasn't, but it is.
Speaking of pain, does losing deals bother you?
I hate to lose more than I like to win.
I was going to ask you, that was kind of the next question. Which side of that continuum are you on?
There's no question. I hate to lose. Winning, great. And maybe if I was a basketball star, if I hadn't won the championship yet, I'd say winning is everything and whatever. But for me, I don't learn from my wins. I learn from my losses. And so for me, I learn a lot, but I hate it. And I even say this on social too, right? It's the same thing with the trolls. I mean, I got 400,000+ people following me, right? I have very few, and I've been blessed. I don't know why, just maybe because of how I've approached things and whatever, that I have very, very few trolls. Like, Very few in my whole career, quite frankly. I've had a couple that have popped up every once in a while, and I've stuffed them back in their place, and that, right, whatever. But I could write a post and get 100 positive comments, and that one negative one is the one I pay attention to. I'm like, and that's a loss to me. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't reach, even though that's an absurd expectation, is to make everybody happy.
So
right?
how do
Like
you build resilience? How do you recover when you lose a deal?
I mean, I think I go back to the advice that I got early in my career in sales is you can never let the highs get too high and then never let the lows get too low.
Right.
Like, you just keep going, man. And you also have to have a plan. I mean, if you don't have a plan, then you're going to get frustrated. You're going to be short-term focused. You're going to go down dark holes but if you know, and we can back up on this. And if you know your why, Simon Sinek, if you understand your core values, and then you know what your priorities and goals are, and then you back into what those goals are from a big picture standpoint, right? And like for me, my daughter's 14. She's in high school right now. She's got 4 more years of high school. My plan is when she graduates, we're cashing out. We're going down to Costa Rica, and we'll do a snowbird thing, probably live half and half. And so I have a vision for where I want to be. And so a loss is a loss, but it's just a loss on a way to that vision. And so it's not like if I didn't have that, a loss could be devastating,
right?
Because I now look at it in a vacuum to say, oh my God, I just lost a huge deal. Like on Friday, like just this Friday, I got an email from somebody who I was locked in with. The guy said, great, positive, looking forward to this. And then he kind of like didn't respond to a couple of times. Then I got the email on Friday. Sorry, John, we decided to go in a different direction. I'm like, what the, and it was a pretty decent sized deal that I was working on that I was like on the forecast, like 90%er, ready to rock. And I'm like, ooh, shit.
Right.
Okay. Hey, guess what? I got to get back to prospecting. You know what I mean? So it's like, okay, cool. Right. And I also have my routine. I know what I need to do. And I think it's a lot about just confidence in yourself, quite frankly, which is hard to build early in your career. Right. Usually early in your career, confidence is masked by ego. I crossed that ego barrier a long time ago. I have an ego, obviously we all do, but I've been humbled too many times to realize that my ego is worth a shit. But I got a lot of confidence in myself. And so I got a lot of confidence. And also, quite frankly, one more point on this is when you've had to rebuild multiple times in your career. And when I say that, I mean, from zero. I mean, we haven't talked in a while, but early 2023, I had this company, 20 employees, about 6 million ARR revenue. And it all went to zero in 2 months. 2 months. Because remember the tech industry when it came to a screeching halt early 2023? Remember Silicon Valley Bank? Remember all that? Right? Every single one of my clients had money with Silicon Valley Bank.
Wow.
Every single one. And I am not a monthly recurring, I'm not an MRR type of company. I'm a professional services company. So we had sponsorships and we had training. And guess when sponsors and training gets renewed? Beginning of the year.
Right.
January hit, GPT pops up too, by the way. And within 2 months, I went from 6 million to zero.
Wow.
Had to rebuild everything. When you go through that type of shit and come back out on the other side, okay, losing a deal here or there is like, who cares?
You spoke, though, about the importance of having those goals. And I am always shocked at the number of sales managers that don't know their salespeople's spouse's name, don't know how many kids they have, much less get into what their personal goals are. Now, I understand there's a line between personal and work. On the other hand, if you're a manager and you're trying to help somebody understand why continually improving their craft and hitting activity expectations, because the sales math tells you in order to hit your income level, to achieve your personal goals, this is what you need to do. I don't know how a sales manager can motivate their team if they don't have that kind of information and conversation.
No, that's a kind of an old school mentality of like kind of treating everybody the same, right? Like, hey, we'll put the gong up and the leaderboard, and everybody compensation is what everybody cares about. That couldn't be further from the truth. It never has been, but maybe back in the day, I will say, I think my generation, your generation, our generation here, Yeah, I don't want to say it was coin operated in sales early on, but I was like, hey, give me my territory, give me my quota, get the fuck out of my way, and let me go make some money here.
Right.
Like, I don't need this fluffy crap. I don't need you to know about my family. I'm here to make money. I'm here to do a job, like that. But that's a wicked old school mentality, right? Now with this generation specifically, like you have to tap into the other to their personal in some way, shape, or form. You don't have to get personal, like really, but you should know. I mean, that's why for me, when I had a business, when I had employees, I put family as one of our core values. And everybody always says, oh, family, companies aren't like families. That wasn't my point. My point was family, period, is one of our core values. Not that we're a big family. I don't believe that. No, we're not a family as a company. Shut up. Because I can't fire my daughter.
Right.
Okay. So stop with this. We're all
Especially
one
because
big
she's your co-author.
Right, exactly. Right. But family in the sense that if your family life isn't right, you're not going to show up in your best self at work.
Right.
So for me, I had a policy where if you got a message, a call from your family that you needed to take for whatever reason, I didn't care what it was. I didn't care if you were about to go to Vegas to do a sales kickoff in front of 500 people and we were going to get paid $50,000 for it. If your kid got sick and went into the hospital that day, like, I don't give a shit about that client. I don't give a shit about whatever it is.
Right.
Go take care of your family. We'll figure it out. And I would tell that to clients too. I'd be like, hey, I just want to let you know this is my policy. So if ever any one of my employees has an issue with their family, it will absolutely oversee what we're doing for you. So I just want to let you know that, right? And that to me is really important. And that's why I think, managers, they need, there's some macro stuff that we all need to improve upon, but this is actually where I think AI is going to come in really, really handy on the frontline coaching and management side of the house, right? Because you learn differently than I learn, right? All these different things. And reps these days are kind of afraid to take feedback from managers because it's subjective and they think the manager doesn't like them. And so the manager doesn't give good feedback. And so HR, all this crap. So it's actually getting worse, quite frankly, now.
Mm-hmm.
But AI is fantastic because I can connect AI. I can either have it on my phone and listening to our conversation in a live, face to face, or I could light up Zoom and have it call record and then give me guidance on how I did at the various components of the sales. Discover, how'd you do with uncovering pain? Did you develop rapport? And then give me immediate feedback of how I did, like good, bad, or ugly, and then suggest content. So I think AI should absolutely, the role play, all that stuff, like front line, 100%, which would then allow the manager to aggregate all that information and look across the team to see what the common needs are, but also free them up to have the individual coaching plans for each one of the reps to figure out what makes them tick.
And should a typical sales manager build their own custom GPT? I mean, you talked about Guy Kawasaki's when you were interviewing him, how you kind of interviewed his GPT first to figure out how to work it. But I mean, as you're describing it, if you just ask reps to go into, even if they're willing to pay the $20 for the pro version, to just go into standard Chat GPT and ask for coaching, that feels like it's going to be very generic. Should the manager build their own GPT to do that?
I think the manager should build their own GPT to do whatever the things that they need help with, just mainly so that they can get used to GPTs and AI and just kind of see what it can do. So I think everybody should create their own GPT, quite frankly.
I agree.
But I don't think that the manager should be the one to create the coaching GPT, because they're just not, most managers aren't taught to even know how to coach, quite frankly. There are some tools out there right now that already do it way better, right? So it's not just the generic Chat GPT, but it's, a company that has created an AI bot. And some of them are just generic where you can get a coach and do a quick little role play. Others actually embed into your system, create your own LLM and then use information from your set, like your Salesforce instance, your marketing materials, and to coach you on exactly what you sell. Right. So I personally would invest in one of those if I was a manager these days. I would look at those tools 100% to bring them inside and use that as the coaching, not me creating it.
Let's talk about the curse of excuses that tends to plague B2B sales. I know you tell the story about one day you got disgusted. You decided to take control and just dismiss excuses, make it happen became your tagline. Talk a little bit more about that kind of epiphany that you had.
Yeah, I mean, excuses are exactly what they are. You know what I mean? They're excuses. Like, we all got them, right? But it's what do you so what? You know what I mean? Like, I, I don't know. For me, it goes back to that $20 thing, right? Like, I, I don't, especially in sales, I have such a hard time with the limiting mentality of not going out and getting your own thing, right? Because sales is one of those ones where if you're even reasonably okay, you should be able to look at something as a force multiplier,
Right.
right? To say, I guess here's where the time value of money or whatever you want to call it clicked in for me. It was, I think I read 4 Hour Work Week, right? And that was about offsetting everything. So I think it got me to think early on about my hourly rate, right? So, and it's a simple exercise all of us can go through, obviously, right? It's like, say you want to make $500,000 a year and you want to work 50 hours a week, right? We'll do the math, right? Give or take, your hourly rate is going to be like $300 an hour, or something like that. I don't know what the math is on that, but give or take, right? So if your hourly, we'll call it $200. If your hourly rate is $200 an hour, right? So you want to make 500 and you want to work 50 hours a week. So therefore, then pretty much anything else that you can that you're doing that you could have somebody else do for cheaper, you offload it, right? So for me, early days, it was kind of that when I was reading the book, it kind of made me, because I was super cheap early in my life, right? I was like, nope, I'm gonna iron all my shirts, I'm gonna do my own laundry, I'm gonna do this. But then I'd sit there and I'd be ironing shirts for hours. And I wasn't really good at it. I'd probably ruin a shirt every once in a while, right? And then I'm like, well, or I could walk down the street for $1.50 and have a professional do this and take those 2 hours and apply them to making more money. It's the same thing with investing in yourself, whether it comes to training, whether it comes to tools. Like, you have to look at it and say, I could either wait for my manager, boss, whoever to invest in me, right? Or I could drop the extra $100, $200, 5,000, whatever the fuck it is. If you don't have confidence in yourself, you're not going to do that.
I think one of the most exciting things I hear from a rep when I'm interviewing them is that they undertook to get some sales training personally on their own.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. What have you done? Like, so if you're listening to this right now and you're out of work, I know it's probably going to be hard to justify because money's going to be tight. The more you can invest, and then, by the way, there's tons of free content out there so that you can go get it. You don't even have to spend money on it. But if I interview you and you haven't had a job for 6 months in sales, by the way, like, sales is one of those jobs, like, sorry, you can go a little bit of time without a job in sales, but there is I want to say about 6 months is my threshold at this point. If you haven't gotten a job, if you have been actively looking in sales for 6 months and you haven't gotten a job yet, something's wrong.
Right.
You might not be cut out for this thing, because if your number one sales job should be you selling to the in your interview, right? So if you've got on these and something's off, right? But in lieu of that, if that 5-month interview you come in and I'm like, oh, this is a little bit like, why? But during those 5 months, you said, well, I've gotten certified in this, I've invested in this, I've taken these courses, I've joined these groups, I've blah blah blah. Like, oh, okay, this is a kid who's willing to make that investment.
But you know what's funny? I had that conversation with a guy, he's probably 26 or 27. I was interviewing him yesterday. He was going through exactly that same thing. And I said, okay, well, tell me about that course. What was the key thing you took from it? And he couldn't answer the question. And then we tried it with another one. He couldn't answer the question. I'm like,
Well, yeah. So again, are you taking these because you care and you want to get better, or are you just checking off a box so you say you got certified and and that's actually double negative in my opinion. Like,
yeah, I certainly reacted negatively to it.
Oh, if I ask you, it's like somebody who says they read a shitload of books and then you ask them about, oh, which one's your favorite? And they're like, well, I got a lot of favorites. And then you start digging into, okay, well, tell me a little bit about Freakonomics. What were some of your big takeaways on that? And they're like, well, it was pretty interesting. And they try to flip it back on you. Like, you've lost all credibility. And now, unfortunately, just in that instance alone, by the way, I now don't trust you at all.
Exactly. Yeah, and
like, no matter what, you could be truthful in every aspect of your life, but because you played that fucking bullshit game, pretending like you were smart, pretending like you did these things, I now don't trust you at all. And if I don't trust you, I can't work with you. I can't hire you.
And I think that trust is a critical thing. And one of the I was looking. So as we're recording this right now, we're in mid-April 2025, and I think you've got 241 episodes of your podcast. I believe that a podcast is an interesting tool for a variety of reasons, but a huge part of it is building trust, showing
Yep.
up every week or every day or every month or whatever your frequency is, so people get to know you, they hear you, they see you, and you build this track record of experience and thoughtfulness or whatever the case may be. So you've been doing it now, I think, every week for what, 5 years?
Yeah, about that. At least probably 10 years,
10
right?
years?
Going back to it. Yeah.
So you're doing it very early. What prompted
Yeah.
that? How did you have the insight that made
Sure.
sense to do?
Again, timing's everything, right? I one of the early days, I had this kind of little. I had invested in a bunch of marketing companies to help me do, and they were just disastrous. Like 20 grand a month, and I would see nothing from it. So I was like, I want almost like a growth hacker.
Right.
Some kid that I could just work with and whatever it is. And so we started working together and TikTok and fun stuff like that, and or no, Snapchat early days. And he was like, you should probably do a podcast. And what I was doing was I called it the evolution was this. I had a community. A lot of people, I'm sure, same to you, they reach out, hey, John, can I pick your brain? I got a quick question. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I can't jump on at 15-minute calls with every single person that asks. So you know what? I'm just going to do an office hours. And this was back when Facebook was relatively new, right? And you could live stream on it. So I was like, you know what? Mondays, I'm just going to light up lunchtime, answer questions, right? Office hours. And it was marginally successful, 15, 20 people would show up, right? But it was usually be the same people, right? And I kind of, after a while, I got a little bored. I'm like, you guys aren't really asking me any interesting questions, so this isn't really working. And so I started bringing people on, right? So guests. And so then I started doing that, and then I would just start interviewing them. And then I realized I don't learn by reading books. This is just not the way my brain works. I literally fall asleep when I read. I also don't read by taking courses, quite frankly. The way I personally learn is by talking to people who are smarter than me.
Right.
So I enjoyed the conversation. And I think one of my superpowers, if I was given one, is curiosity. I know I'm not the smartest kid out there, but I know I'm smart enough to be curious. And when I'm curious, it ends to a good conversation. So these conversations started being really, really good. And then we just started turning them into a podcast. And then we went into an actual podcast platform, and it just evolved from there. So for me, it was actually started with trying to engage with my audience and bring more value, evolved into a form of education for myself that I didn't realize was really really resonated with me, and then just became something that I just fundamentally enjoy doing. And by the way, I recommend everybody, quite frankly, have a podcast.
Yeah, so a lot of people are saying, Jesus, too late. There's too many of them now. Some people said the same thing when a few companies had websites too. What's your answer to that argument?
Well, yeah, if you want to be Joe Rogan, sure. You know what I mean? And hopefully nobody wants to be Joe Rogan. But anyways, but if you look at it different, if you look at it as how many downloads am I getting on? Yeah, stop. Don't even bother. Don't even bother. Same thing with building your personal brand. Don't even bother on getting on LinkedIn if you care about how many likes and comments you're going to get.
Right.
But if you look at it as A, this is the way I can learn. B, I can use it as actually a lead gen tool, because think about it this way, and I coach people on this. Like you could cold call for 1 billion years into the top executives, and you will get very, very limited responses.
Right.
But if I reach out to you and say, hey, do you want to be on my podcast? That's your response rate is going to be a lot higher.
Right.
So if you focus, and so if I'm a rep right now and I'm walking in, I need to learn about this industry. So say I'm brand new in an industry, I have no idea what I'm even talking about. First thing I'm going to do is actually start a podcast. And I'm going to reach out to the exact personas and ICPs that I sell to.
Yep.
And I'm going to say, hey, Ed, you know what? I started a little podcast here. I bring on other executives where we just talk about some of the challenges that are happening in the industry. I was wondering if you'd want to come on board. Get a yes. You don't do the hard sell. You just do a really thoughtful, you prepare for it like you'd prepare for a meeting. And then usually it ends up with, by the way, what do you do? Oh, this is what we do. Oh, you should talk to my team. So there's a lead gen source for you. But then it's content for days.
Right.
All you got to do is this.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. You don't even need Riverside, by the way. Just Zoom.
Right.
Now you have asset. Then you get some fucking 15-year-old kid who's really good at cutting up videos and TikTokifying them and those type of things. You give them like a couple $100 a month. Now you have an audio rip for the podcast. You have a video for YouTube, long format, and you have probably 15 different shorts that you can put on YouTube and social that drive back to this and go from there.
Right.
And then you can use that, by the way, to send it to your prospects.
Right.
Hey, Ed, I just had this great conversation with so-and-so the other day, and they fit the similar profile you. I remember you had said something. Check out this clip that they had. Thought you might get some value out of that.
Right.
Like it's literally a no-brainer to do, and it takes you like 2 hours a month plus maybe a couple $100, $200-300 at this point.
Right. Let's talk about sales training. I've got the sense that it used to be you'd go to a sales trainer, Sandler model, whatever the case may be, and that sales
Mm-hmm.
training would envision the entire sales cycle
Mm-hmm.
or the entire life cycle with a client. My sense is that that's changing. I mean, you talk about prospecting for BDRs.
Mm-hmm.
Kevin Dorsey, KD, who you connected me with, talks
Mm-hmm.
about sales management. Keenan
Mm-hmm.
talks about the gap and
Yep.
qualification, kind of his version of MedPick or whatever the case may
Mm-hmm.
be. Am I correct in observing that sales training is getting segmented and much more specialized?
Oh, it's been that way. There's ever since I got in, quite frankly, back in 2006 and seven into this. What really struck me about Basho when I joined it with Jeff Hoffman was he had productized training and segmented it out. Whereas to your point, usually it was, oh, I'm your sales trainer, and we're going to start here, and we're going to bring you all the way. And this methodology, here's your sales methodology,
Right.
right? And it was you were Miller Hyman, you were Sandler, you were value selling. I've never been a methodology guy because quite frankly, there's I've never seen a singular methodology that addresses all the different aspects of the sales process and quite frankly is agile enough to adjust to what's happening right now. I mean, sales is moving faster than I've ever seen in my life
Right.
right now. And so you think some old school, stodgy, blue sheet shit is going to actually vibe today? Are you crazy? So to me, I've always been, hey, and I think it was early days too. Like when I would go to these trainings, I'd be like, okay, well, I like that, but the rest of this stuff is kind of bullshit.
Well,
You
it's
know,
like
like
most books
Sandler,
that you read.
yeah, same thing, right? It's like it's 90% fluff with that 10%. So that's why I don't like books because I don't want to read 200 pages to get to the 5 that actually matter.
Right.
That's why I love blog posts. That's why I love those type of things because I'm all about, again, application. Like, let me learn it, apply it, learn it, apply it. And so, for me, let's use Sandler. I love Sandler. Like upfront contract, pain funnel, and reverse questioning, gold. Okay. The rest of Sandler is quite frankly, dog shit, in my opinion. Their prospecting is awful. Like literally, they tell people this is a cold call. Like that's what they train reps to do.
Right.
Okay, have fun with that. So I'm gonna take, my prospecting stuff because I think it's the best out there. Period. Right. I'm gonna take maybe the guys from 30 Minutes to President's Club for cold calling specifically, because those guys are assassins at cold calling, right? I'm going to take gap selling for discovery and probably some Sandler stuff for discovery.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to do MedPick maybe, right? As kind of a framework of stuff that we want to collect.
Right.
And I'm going to do Chris Voss, Never Split the Difference for negotiations on how we do that.
Right.
And so I think all of us should be creating our own methodology, but pulling the best of all the different pieces. Anybody out there, right? I think you're a dinosaur right now. Like I actually walk away from opportunities. I ask very specifically the question to a prospect, are you looking for a methodology? And when they say yes, I ask a clarifying. I said, what does methodology mean to you? Do you mean like soup to nuts from account planning all the way through to account management and like integration into your systems all the way through from top down management, that type of thing? Or are you just looking for like structure that you can use to kind of apply to the different components to this so that you can have some consistency in a common language? 9 times out of 10, they're going to say, it's just more of a common language and consistency, not the methodology. Okay, good. Now we can talk. But if somebody's like, nope, I want a methodology, I'm like, thank you very much for your time. Mr. and Mrs. Dinosaur, enjoy wasting all that money and in a year and a half coming back and saying we need a new one because the VP of sales left and the new VP of sales wants a different methodology and we have to spend another $300,000 and waste all of our reps' time who don't want to go through this anymore because of the book of the month club mentality and we don't care anymore. So
yeah, the interesting thing is in the industrial space, they need a fundamental methodology. I mean, in most cases, the sales process is as refined as get an inquiry, collect technical details, do a quote, and follow up. And I mean, we need more of a framework than that in order to have this structure on which we can hang these other pieces.
Yeah, well, quite frankly, I think there's a long tail to everything, right? I constantly have to be pulling my head out of my ass in the SaaS world, right? Because once I pull my head out of the SaaS world, it's like sales 1985 all over again.
Exactly. Right.
The problem is I don't. Whereas I used to think that was, oh, okay, I can, there's always going to be a long tail. I don't think there's going to be a long tail anymore. I think those reps, the reps you talk about, are again already irrelevant, quite frankly.
Yeah, because the
Those
buyers
are
are
order
advancing
takers.
much faster than the reps.
They're order takers.
Right.
Why do I need a human to take an order?
Exactly.
I don't understand. If you're not going to apply the art of sales, like I've been a huge proponent of the science of sales. I always talk about how sales should be more of a science than an art. Unfortunately, we have over-scienced the sales process,
right.
and there's no art left.
Right.
There's no relationship.
But that goes back to the golf and the steak dinner.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right. So my sense is that you are switched on all the time, high energy, completely focused. The only recreation or diversion I've ever heard you reference in any way was the RV you bought early in COVID. Do you still have it?
The what?
The RV?
Oh yeah, got the RV. Yeah, still rocking it. Actually, it's in for repairs. I got to call and see how much money I got to spend because the winter kills it. But yeah, no, the RV is it was a fun little thing for take a cross country trip with the daughter during COVID. She was 10, so she still liked us. Yeah, still got it. It's part of my exit strategy too. Quite frankly, I'm gonna Mad Max the shit out of that thing and drive it past the border one of these days when this whole thing blows up. So
and,
yeah,
and basketball. You talk about basketball every once in a while. Is that how you burn off stress?
I mean, you probably want to edit this out. So I work, man. I spend the time with my daughter and my wife, and we travel. But work for me is kind of my hobby.
Right.
People say that if you love what you do, you don't work a day in your life. I work. Don't get me wrong, and I'd love to be a multi-millionaire and just kind of not have to, right? But yeah. I mean that, and I smoke a lot of weed. I mean, quite frankly, I mean, that's to me, like, and I kind of joke, but I don't. That is absolutely 100% how I keep an even kill. And now Massachusetts, it's legalized, it's medical. Now I can dose it in very specific ways. So, for instance, when I want to get creative, I have a certain strain that I smoke. If I want to do this, I do some edibles. If I want to get focused on this, then so for me, it really is a true regulator.
And when's your flow time? Can you control it by the weed, or are you morning or late at night?
I mean, I never smoke when I'm doing stuff I'm getting paid for. Never smoke during the day. I never smoked for work. I have too much respect for other people's time and money to, even though I could argue that I'm really good and all this other stuff when I'm stoned, I think it's disrespectful when somebody's expecting something from you for you to be anything other than 100%. But my flow state is, I get up at 6 o'clock every morning, kind of do my thing, get my daughter to school and go. And then she comes home at 6 and we take a break from 6 to 7-ish, 7:30-ish to dinner and catch up on the week. And then she goes and does her homework and my wife and I go back up and do work. So my flow state it depends on what you mean by flow state, right? Because there's an admin flow state where I can just hammer through just spreadsheets and bullshit and stuff like that. Then there's a creative flow state. And sometimes I need a little help to get into those different mentality flow states. Staring at a whiteboard versus staring at a spreadsheet and making my eyes bleed. So, yeah.
All right. So one of the things that I most associate with your consistent content creation is the idea of a great SKO, a sales kickoff. It feels like you've worked hard to kind of perfect the art of the SKO. Would you agree? Is that something that you emphasize, or have I just misunderstood that?
No, I don't know if I've worked on perfecting it. I've worked on trying to break it as far as the history of like the most sales kickoffs. And again, I think it goes back to my personal disdain for people who get paid a lot of money to stand up and spew a lot of crap that doesn't have any impact or change in any way, shape, or form what I was going to do. That's why I'm not on the keynotes circuit, by the way. And I did create one keynote. Like I did create what I would consider a keynote, right? Which is, I call it the continuous growth mindset. You can find it on YouTube if you want to. And it's about the kind of my journey after my dad passed away and all this stuff and what I learned from it, right? About continuous improvement, growth, mindset, all that fun stuff, right? But and even with that though, there's like takeaways, like, okay, go do this, right? And but historically, most of my keynotes are like training, because I'm like, if you're going to sit here and listen to me for an hour, 2 hours, whatever it is, I want you to be able to walk away with something that you can do, not just a good feeling. And that's what I had such a hard time with. I'd see keynotes and I'd be like, okay, that was great, interesting, but that literally has zero. I'm not going to change a single thing about my life based on what you just said there.
All right, so let's start zero based. Let's build a perfect SKO. What does it look like?
Well, it all depends on what the priorities of the organization are. I mean, I think it shouldn't be product knowledge. Anything that is and especially now, anything that is a one-way delivery of information should not be at a keynote, should not be at a sales kickoff.
Okay.
You should record that, send it to the team beforehand, let them, like, product knowledge. Do I really need to spend 2 hours sitting to our head of marketing, listening to the new features that they're going to put out?
Pulling people out of the field, flying them in,
Like,
buying them dinners, having them hung over, all of that just for them to get the information they ought to be getting on their own anyway.
It makes zero sense to me.
Right.
Why? I guess before we went virtual, like, I got it. You know what I mean? It's a great way for us all to get together and whatever. But now that everybody's used to this, and we have video recording tools that are so easy that we could just light it up and be like, hey, I'm just going to walk you through the new demo here. Everybody just watch that. Now, when you come to sales kickoff, it's application. We're working on messaging, we're working on account plans, we're working on you know what I mean? We're role playing in scenarios. So my best sales kickoff is obviously setting the stage for the year about the organization. You got to paint that vision, because everybody has to know where they're going and how they feel part of it. The problem with, I think, a lot of executives, when they paint the vision, they don't boil it down to how the people in the room are part of it. It's almost implied, like, hey, yeah, sales team, we got to hit these numbers. But I think it's really important for an executive to outline exactly where we're going this year, how we're going to get there, and what your role as individuals is. Because if you don't paint a vision for people, they will just do their job.
Right.
If you paint a vision and they feel part of something bigger, you can get them to do 10 times more than what you pay them for.
Well, that goes back to generational differences and how the manager needs to engage people now.
Exactly. So once the executive paints the vision, then I think it's incumbent upon, and this is where I think, VPs of sales need to take a step back here for a minute and stop barking at enablement and telling them what to do, because VPs of sales inherently are usually emotional about what they need. They're very rarely backed on fact and data and insights. Mm-hmm. So we need prospecting. Our pipeline's terrible. And it's like, we need negotiation. My reps suck at negotiation. Well, does the data support that? So I think leading up to sales kickoff, enablement should be doing deep analysis, data analysis, with whatever data that you have to identify the true gaps and reasons why they're missing target, why you're doing this or whatever it is, and then putting together a plan for that day that is a true kickoff. Isn't a one day we're going to stuff all this down your throat and good luck out there, everybody. It is no. We are going to introduce these concepts because they align with our vision, and they're the gaps that we need to fill so that we can make sure that we're going to hit that vision. And we're going to kick things off with this part of it. But then next week we're going to do this, and next month we're going to do that, and next. So it should truly be a kickoff, but it should be a hands-on kickoff of working on stuff that you can't record on a video and send to people to consume.
You've got sponsors. You recently started talking about Clay. You've talked about CRM by Unbounce for a while. Did you hesitate initially to take sponsors, or did you feel that was a comfortable part of your model all along?
Well, I kind of, with my previous, so when JB Sales kind of evolved and we ended up creating Sell Better as part of it, right? That was our first entree into the sponsor world for us as an org. And that made me feel fine because, that was a weekly webinar and there was leads and sponsors for those leads, right? So I kind of saw the value of it. I saw that game, right? Then when it all fell apart and I went back off on my own, I looked at trying to diversify my revenue streams, right? And this is why I think all sales reps should do. It's like, you got to look at your ecosystem, right? So who's your ICP and persona, and then how many I always look at what's the number of meetings you need to get on a monthly basis to be able to kind of conversion ratios,
Right.
hit your numbers. So based on those meetings, where can they come from? Right. And this is what I did back at Thrive. Obviously there's cold outbound,
Sure.
right? Whatever. There's inbound, your website SEO, but then there's partners, right? Now for me, there's sponsors. And then there's, whatever channels. So you look at optimizing those. So for me, I looked at it when I went off on my own, and it just was kind of serendipitous in the sense that I was talking to, Kevin Dorsey. And I had asked him, I was like, man, I was just talking. I was like, man, I just wish there was somebody like an agent. Like I wish, like, influencers out in the B2C world, they have agents, right? Sports people have agents. I wish there was like something for like LinkedIn influencers to have an agent, because I just need somebody to go, like, I have a huge audience here, right? And he was like, I got a guy for you, as a matter of fact.
Wow.
And he introduced me to this guy, Anish, who was really just getting started. And he had this concept of being an agent for. And I was, started working with him, and I said, look, before we get into this, I want to be crystal clear here. I am not going to be a NASCAR logo. I will not rep anybody and everybody just to get paid. The only sponsors I will work with are the ones that either A, I use their product, like I have to use it so I can have credibility in it, or B, I know their leadership team, I've talked to customers, and I believe in their product or service. Because going back to what I think the number one thing you need to be successful in sales is a belief in what you do. If you don't believe in what you do, then go find something else to do. It's the same thing for me. I built my entire career off of authenticity. I can't, in good conscience, take money from somebody just to put a post on LinkedIn and say, go buy this shit, right? So for me, I had very strong, very limiting sponsor guidelines. And we put together a list of sponsors, tools that I used, everything else, and I had him go out, and now he knows exactly who I like to work with. So I only work with a few. I don't work with 50 of them, 4 or 5 at a time. And 4 out of the 5 I use myself and talk about the use cases, right? Again, not, hey, look, there's a great little marketing thing here. It's like, no, look at how I just used clay. Like I just created this table, and holy smokes, like now I can do this. Otter, like I just recorded this and I did that. Like, what in the hell? Like, that was bananas. Yeah? My whole concept with my membership is, I call it the JB Sales Learning Lab. And the idea behind it is, again, going back to, I know I'm not the smartest kid out there, but I've gotten to a point in my career where I got a decent amount of experience. I also have access to people and resources and tools that most people don't, right? I mean, I can call up, I talked about Guy Kawasaki. I mean, I'm not on a, texting relationship with Guy Kawasaki or anything like that, but I got some pretty cool access to some pretty cool stuff. And so, bringing that in front of people and showing them how I'm learning out loud, basically.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It's like, I don't know what the answers are, but I'm gonna learn out loud, and y'all come along, and if you like it, let's go, right?
But you figured, you kind of learned your way into video, I think, long before other people. You've been heavy into video, over-indexed in video for, 5 years, 7 years, quite a while.
Yeah, I think it goes back to my lack of liking to read text, and when everybody's like, oh, the book was so much better, I'm like, no, it wasn't. This is because the movie was better. Like, because I'd rather enjoy maybe technically the book was better because it gave more nuances and better characters, whatever it is. But I thoroughly enjoyed the movie better than spending 12 hours reading that book.
It feels like it also fits better with your emphasis on authenticity.
Yeah. Absolutely. And you can't fake.
And where how do you feel about video as part of prospecting? Like the Drift tool Drift used to have, or Vidyard, or Wistia Soapbox, or something like that.
So I haven't had a lot of, I think it all depends on personas, and everything else. But I haven't had a lot of luck with it. I like LinkedIn video. I like LinkedIn videos that you can send those. But the Vidyard stuff, I think if you have something to show, then what I can't stand is the generic, whiteboard, your name on it, because it's mail merged, and when you open it up, it's like, hey, thanks so much for, I think that's just even worse than a spam message, right? But I think for my use cases on video is, Like if I can show you something, if I have a dashboard, for instance, say you're a cybersecurity, right? I'm obviously not going to send video on your first one because cybersecurity will never even touch that. But if I nurture you for a while and maybe you engage with some of my content, maybe on the fifth or sixth one, I'm going to be like, hey, not sure if you have a single pane of glass here that you can see all the security instance. Usually a lot of the CIOs that I work with have multiple different systems that they have to look at. But we created this dashboard where you can look at everything here. And I just wanted to show it to you here. See how this works? If that resonates with you, give me a call back. Like that's a use case that I think is pretty impressive.
Got it.
But my personal favorite application of video is actually there's three of them. One is objection handling. Right. So you know, middle of the sales process, you get the email, sorry, John, we've gone a different direction, or sorry, John, you know, we got to push this till Q1 next year or something like that. Instead of, obviously you want to call them, right? But they're not going to pick up the phone. They know what's coming. And what are you going to write in an email that's going to magically change their mind, right? So instead I just light up a video and I'll be like, hey, Ed, I got your email, man. I'm a little confused though, because you had said earlier that your main priorities were X, Y, and Z and blah, blah, blah. And now it seems like your priorities have changed. Would you mind just getting 5 minutes back on a call with me just so I could kind of reset expectations here? Because I'm just a little confused, right? Like a very genuine,
Right.
like that has great use case. Another one is delivering proposals. So obviously I want to deliver my proposal to Power, okay? But say I got Jim and Sarah, Jim's non-power, Sarah's power, and I got to get to Sarah, but Jim's blocking me. He will not let me present my proposal to, instead of just sending Jim the PDF and having him forward it to her and her look at the price and go, see you later. I create a video and I put a little bubble head in the corner. I bring my proposal up and I was like, hey, Jim, you know, instead of just sending you the PDF here, I just wanted to kind of walk you through how we built this proposal. And, you know, here's the highlights that you said that were really important to you. And here's the components of our solution that I think really align. You can look through the details later, but I just want to make sure I highlight the reason why I think we're such a good fit for your, you know, what you're trying to accomplish here. Oh, and by the way, if you want to send this to Sarah, feel free. And Sarah, if you're watching this, I just want to let you know, Jim's been great to work with. He's been such an awesome steward of your business. I kiss his ass a little bit, right? So now I send it to you, well, Jim, and now because of Vidyard or whatever tool you're going to use, I see that you opened it. I see how long you watched it.
Right.
And if I did it right, I basically just did your job for you.
Right.
So now you forward it up to Sarah, and now I'm presenting in front of Sarah.
Right.
So those are my two favorite. I like those use cases better than prospecting.
Yeah, I'd gone part way with that second one, but I'd never thought about the part kissing his ass at the end.
It's a little bit, you know, don't make it obvious, but just be like, hey, you know what? I've been so impressed with the process here and what you guys are going through. I'm really excited about the opportunity. Jim's been great to work with,
right.
You know, that type of thing. So, you know, you don't want to cheese it out because if you do, then again, it goes back to authenticity, right?
You used to work for Jack Welch, and I think you and I may have traveled a similar journey. I used to have a great deal of admiration for that kind of approach to business. Let's not screw around. Let's find good people. Let's hold people accountable. But I read the book, The Man Who Killed Capitalism, a couple of years ago, and it reframed the way I think about it. I think you went through kind of a similar adjustment. What's your opinion at this point?
Yeah, unfortunately. Look, there's a lot of good that Jack brought from a no bullshit, like, let's cut the shit here. Like, let's get to work. Let's do this right? He was a little bit draconian though, with how harsh he was. He didn't, the EQ, the relationship side of the house meant nothing to him. He was very, very black and white. I will give him credit though, and create a bit of a, you know, everybody gave him shit for top grading. You know, the whole concept of always fire your bottom 10%, right. Always, no matter what, right? And I talked to him about that because it was when he was doing his online MBA program, and I was his VP of sales for, it was only a couple of months, but it was a really cool experience. But he goes, I was like, Jack, I gotta, you know, would love to just pick your brain about this. He's like, everybody always gives me shit about that. He goes, I don't understand why. He goes, I'm not that bad. He's like, I actually think that the opposite approach is worse. And he painted this picture. He says, all right, so say you have a rep, okay? And that rep is not good, right? They're average at best or whatever, but they're not great. But you don't want to give them bad feedback, right? Because you feel bad for them, right? So you give them okay feedback for their entire, 5 years, 6 years, 10 years. Hey, yeah, you're doing an okay job, Ed. You're doing all right. You're doing all right, right? So now this person develops this false sense of security about the fact that they're good, right? Because you're too chicken shit to have the conversation with them. Then the economy turns, whatever it is, and layoffs come. And everybody knows that layoffs, for the most part, usually start at the bottom and they move their way up. Right. So they start with the lowest performing people, and then you kind of hopefully stay with the good ones. So now you have somebody who's sat in their job for 5 years thinking they were good, and now all of a sudden they get fired. Now they have this massive inferiority complex because they're like, well, wait a minute. I thought I was good at what I did, and now I'm apparently not. He's like, what's worse? You dragging somebody out like that and then giving them that scenario, or coming to them up front and saying, look, you don't suck in general. You just suck at this. I'm going to do you a favor. I'm going to let you go find what you're great at because you're not great at this, nor are you ever going to be great at this. So I'm going to pull this Band-Aid off right now. And as harsh as this might feel, I'm actually doing you a favor because you're now going to go find what you're meant to do. And when he explained it that way, I was like, you know what? That is far more. It's like when you have a pet and that pet's old. Like my dog, when I was growing up, it was like 19 years old. You know what I mean? 19. It was a poodle. It was 19 years old. And towards the end of its life, it barely moved. It couldn't control its bowels. It shit all over the house. And my mom was always like, we got to put this thing down. And my sister and I were like, no, it's our dog. We love our dog, right? That was the meanest thing we could have done to that fucking dog. That dog was in misery for the last 2 years of her life. What would have been the right humane thing to do was, as soon as it couldn't move by itself, as soon as it couldn't control its bowels, to say, let's put you to bed, sweetheart. It's been a good ride.
Right.
It's the same thing with business. People sometimes need to be told that they're just, and it's okay that you're not good at this. You'll be good at something else.
Speaking of being good, are phone and email still good? Are they still effective for prospecting?
Again, industry dependent. I think, and persona dependent, quite frankly, just like video. I personally think these days, though, that cold outbounds needs to be seen as more of a marketing function than a sales function. I think it's about impression points. I think it's about positive impression points. I think the days of, again, I'm being very general here. I think in your space, probably cold calling is a lot more effective than it is in the tech space right now.
Absolutely.
Same thing with email, right? Is like, tech, it's just, I get 300 emails a day,
right.
You know what I mean? Type of thing. And your space is a lot different. But quite frankly, in general, if you think that these days that you're going to get through this gauntlet, you're going to be able to A, get the right contact information for somebody, good luck with that. B, make a call and have anybody other than a human pick up the phone, good luck with that. C, have somebody who is worthwhile talking to, not a gatekeeper, right? So you have to go through that gauntlet first. And then you think that whatever comes out of your mouth, right, is going to have that person be like, oh, man, all that strategy stuff that I've been planning and all those initiatives that I'm working on right now, like, you know what? What you just said there was magic, and I'm going to ignore all that. I'm going to jump into a sales cycle with you because that sounded brilliant. If you think that's going to happen, you are out of your fucking mind, and you are setting yourself and your team up for absolute failure and disappointment. But if you look at it as an impression point, where that cold call that left that voicemail might lead that person to go look at the email that you sent them a couple of days ago, which might lead them to go look at your LinkedIn profile, which might lead them to go look at your company. And if you look at it that way in totality, then I think it's still totally worth it doing. But I think if you look at it as a singular form of, this is how I'm going to make my money and I'm going to be a cold caller and that's it these days, man, I hope you find an industry where that still burns, right? Because they're getting less and less and less right now.
Right. All right, so I'm going to put your LinkedIn profile and the link to you and your daughter's book on Amazon and a link to your podcast in the show notes. What resources do you recommend people turn to? Not just yours, but where do you go? What do you watch consistently? Blogs, podcasts, YouTube channels, etc.
I mean, this is going to sound flip, but AI is where I would turn to, is quite frankly, because it has all the answers for everything if you just use it right. I mean, genuinely. I mean, don't get me wrong. So here's what I would do. So my website has everything. It's free resources. You can go to YouTube. You got all sorts of fun stuff. But what I would do is I would go in. And so what's a title that you typically sell to? Like, who's a persona in an industry for you, like that you would want to learn about, right? From a sales standpoint or anything. Like,
so my clients are typically going to want to learn about maybe the global director of engineering.
Okay, cool. So I'm going to go into ChatGPT and I'm going to say, give me the top 5 thought leaders, whether they be companies or individuals, in this space. And again, sorry, what was the title again?
Global director of engineering.
who are posting and sharing content about the priorities and challenges of global heads of engineering, right? Please include a link to their blog and in a brief summary of the theme of what they present, right? It'll give me 5 of them, 10 of them, whatever. And say, give me 5 more, give me 5. And then I'm going to look through and I'm going to say, okay, which ones do I like? I'm just going to be like, oh, I like that. Ooh, the content that one puts out is really good, right? Whatever. Cool. So now I'm going to find 5 or 6 of them that I really like and I think I can get value out of. Then I'm going to go into a product like Feedly, right? Feedly. It's RSS aggregator. I'm going to create a folder in there called, Global Heads of Engineering. And I'm going to dump those 5 blogs in there. And what that does is that when I open up that folder, I just see the headlines of all the different blogs from all the different people, right? So now my morning routine is going to be when I grab, so instead of checking the news, right, which I'm just going to be fucking pissed off at no matter what, or my fantasy leagues, which I suck at, right? Instead of that, I'm going to read my morning paper, but my morning paper is going to be all the thought leadership stuff that is about the industry and the people that I care about, right? So that, to me, when I say about sales tips and tactics, whatever, feel free to Google it. Feel free to chat GPT. Hey, teach me like John Barrows, whatever. Business acumen is what I would triple down on. If I was a sales rep right now.
Makes sense.
It's coming up is like, how do I learn how to speak that language? How do I learn the people that I want to sell to most? How do I effectively become them? So I can have empathy, so I can understand their situation, so I can genuinely help them. And I can be curious enough to ask them questions that are contextualized as opposed to tell me about your priorities. Like, shut the fuck. Like, I think the 3 most insulting questions or statements you can make in today's world.
What keeps you up at night?
What keeps you up at night? My daughter, next question. What are your priorities? Shut up. And tell me about your business. Those 3 are the most insulting because I can go into ChatGPT and say, give me the top priorities of VPs of sales in the SaaS industry right now. What are their main KPIs? What do they have to do? And then instead of saying, hey, tell me about your priorities, I can walk in and be like, hey, you know what? We're working with a lot of VPs of sales right now in the tech industry, and they're telling us that walking into the new year, their main challenges are X, Y, and Z. Are you seeing the same thing? Just something as simple as that.
All right. How do folks connect with you?
jbarrows.com that's the best way. LinkedIn, I hate to say this, it's going to sound like a humble brag. I've reached that 30,000 limit on connection, so I can't accept anymore. So if you can connect, but you're going to get a templated email from me saying sorry, but here's some other ways. The fastest, so jbarrows.com is where you'll find everything. But if anybody actually wants some like coaching or one-on-one stuff, Instagram is by far, right? So my handle is John M as in Michael Barrows. All you got to do is connect with me and then DM me with a video. Hey, John, I got this quick question about this. Any thoughts on that, whatever, and I'll get right back to you.
Cool. So I'll put that link in the show notes as well. Yeah. Real quick, your ICP, so people know if they should connect with you that way.
Yeah, so I got 2, right? So I got the corporate side, which is, usually companies, but, over 5 or 10 reps, right? I got something for small teams and big teams, usually selling a B2B solution with an ACV of over 10 grand, give or take, right? SDRs, BDRs, AEs, CS, AMs, that whole thing. And then there's the individual. And the individual for me is, I got 3 different programs on my individual platform. And that is anybody who's willing to get better. Anybody who's willing to put in the work and wants to get better at sales, that you'll find value. I just launched that like 3 months ago, and it's all brand new content, all with AI stuff. And again, just learning out loud with everything else. So if anybody's looking to level up as an individual and not wait for their company to invest in them, those individual channels are the ones that I go for. So,
all right, wrap us up. 2 minutes about what companies have to understand about how B2B sales is changing so they can succeed. I was going to say through 2030, but I think based on this conversation, we're through 2027, maybe.
I was going to say. So what's the question?
2 minutes to wrap up what companies have to understand about what they have to do to succeed.
Agility, and you just keep testing and trying different things out. What worked 6 months ago is just not going to work anymore right now. So you have to create a framework. I think every organization should turn their sales org into a sales lab. And every week just pick something about the sales process and break up into little teams. It's like engineers. You know how engineers do like hackathons and stuff like that, where they pick kind of things and they nerd out on it for a little while. I think we should do the same in sales. You should get product marketing, sales, account management, everybody in a room together. You partner up in groups of 2 or 3. You pick anything about the sales process, prepping for meetings, writing better emails, doing better follow-up, whatever it is. And then say, all right, you all have an hour to figure this out. Whoever can figure out the best way of doing this that's better than the way we're doing it right now wins. And then we're all going to apply apply that next week and we're going to see how it works. And then next week, we're going to pick something else. And the next week, we're going to pick something else. You have to create this agile framework, and you have to give these kids a chance to learn before they get replaced.
And relentless improvement.
Absolutely. Every day. Like Kaizen, man. Every day. Continuous improvement.
Awesome conversation, John. It's great to reconnect after, I think it's been maybe 5 years since we really spoke on the
it's been a while, man. I appreciate you reaching out.
I've enjoyed it. Thank you so much for your insights.
Yeah, thank you.
And everyone listening, you know what's next. You need to please like, share, comment, and by all means, subscribe. Look at the show notes. You'll find the links to connect with John, to share information, to get his feedback, to jump into his programs, whatever works for you. Thanks, everyone, for listening to the Industrial Growth Institute podcast.